Daniel Hose was born in Belleville, Illinois in 1964. The 58-year-old is known by many aliases including Daniel, Dan, Scuba McGee, Blues Dad, or that one guy who I kinda know of but I've never talked to. Mr. Blues Dad graduated from Belleville High School West in 1982 and from Missouri University of Science and Technology in the year 1987 with a mechanical engineering major. Mr. Ho is a father of 4 children: Blue Hose, Abby Hose, and literally Jesus Christ himself. Like, actually look at this dude. He's fucking Jesus. And Dan Hose Jr., the forgotten child. Daniel is a man of many hobbies and a self-described one lucky guy. But how it always is, there is always a darker half of people's life. The unknown. The hidden. I've had to plunge into the darkest and deepest portions of the internet, Facebook, in order to find this level of information on this seemingly good man. My hope is that this video will help shine light on this previously undiscussed portion of Daniel's life. His involvement in the underground European hip-hop scene, his forgotten child, his covered-up life of crime, and his covered-up death in the year 2012. In the year 2020, the British rapper Fury, in collaboration with The Wasp, composed a masterpiece which is the song Dan's Hose. Dane's Hose. Daniel Hose? Here is a small clip of the Fury song.
Sixes on that Chevy with some hoes in it. Take it off, baby, bend over, let me see it. You're looking for a real pussy eater, I can be it quick. I'm trying to take you shot, buy your ass no shoes. I'm trying to lick that click while I'm looking up at you.
These deep lyrics mixed with the master-like production of the clap sound effect all come together to make a clue into Daniel Hose's life. The obvious conclusion is that Daniel Hose was or still is a drug lord in the United Kingdom. After I made this conclusion, everything started to fall into place. As seen here, Daniel's child, Blue, is creating a battery made out of lemons. Why is this relevant? Well, as you may know, batteries are created to contain electricity, in which the current directly into the body could potentially become lethal. Blue is here holding a homemade electrocution device that her father has, or will use against his enemies. This photo proves that Daniel has taught his child, or children, his ways of crime in order to pass on his drug distribution business overseas. When researching this project, I found a secret cover-up that Mr. Blues' dad tried to hide. This cover-up is his secret child that he had while running his drug empire in Britishland. On this Twitter account, @HoseDan, you see a man seemingly in his early to late 20s with a disgusting cat filter on. His location is set to Orpington, England, lining up with the location of Mr. Dan Hose's drug empire. I believe that whenever Daniel is in England, he is with his child, Dan Jr., running their drug empire together. To see further into the mind into this Dan Jr. person, you have to go into his one and only tweet from July the 11th of 2013. This tweet reads, "You'll always have something until you bloody need it." This tweet could possibly reference his father, Daniel Hose Sr., and how he seems to always be around with his father or his business. But his father is unable to fill the role a typical father should hold. Daniel Sr. seems to use his child as a tool, a resource, a loyal minion. When you go farther into the depths of this Twitter page, you will see the banner, Daniel Jr. with a gun. This exactly proves my point of Mr. teaching his children how to create and use weapons that he could use in order to defend himself against the police, his rivals, and even possibly his family. Daniel Hose Jr. sadly died on July the 13th of 2013. On the day after this tweet was posted. I want to think this is a coincidence, I truly do. But I cannot, because it is not the truth. Daniel Hose Jr. was murdered by his father in order to keep his mouth shut. Because if someone in his life in Illinois found this tweet and connected the dots, his entire life could fall apart. Daniel Hose will do anything in order to get his way and protect himself. As we see here, even if it comes to murdering those that he loves. After the death of his child, he had seemed to have had a realization to end his life of crime. I believe this to be true because all leads come to a standstill after this date on July the 12th of 2013. He seems to have stopped all of his relations with his former work associates in England. But as they say, karma always catches up with you in the end. The cartel placed a hit out on Daniel. This is why you might see Daniel on several trips and holidays around the globe at this time. But Daniel did not know for certain, and he thought that he had been pronounced missing by the cartel and they called off the hit. This is why after weeks of traveling he returned to his home in Illinois. But just after 2 hours of him landing in Springfield, he had been killed by the cartel on September 20th of 2013. To remove suspicions, the cartel had created a clone of Daniel without the memory of his past life in crime. But they had to find a way to dispose of the body. So they had leaked the death of Daniel Hose to the press. But they had not included the photo of the body. So I believe that the press thought the wrong Daniel Hose had passed away. A Daniel Hose that was an elderly sport writer. Nobody threw twice about not seeing the body, because closed casket funerals are perfectly normal. But all of this is a 50% possibility of happening. This is a well-constructed theory that may or may not have happened. The other possibility will be discussed in Chapter 4. In this chapter, we will discuss the other possible theory of what could have saved Daniel from the European drug cartel after their falling out. Here we will explore the very real possibility of Daniel Hose not dying, but changing his identity into what was to become a worldwide icon. On September the 15th of 2013, Daniel Hose had been on a hot air balloon with his family while fleeing the country to hide from the Europeans. There on the hot air balloon, he had been beamed up into an alien spaceship. These aliens had been viewing Daniel's life since his birth and sensed that at some point in his life Daniel would need their help. When inside the spaceship, they gave Daniel a proposition, which instated in order to hide from the cartel he could change his identity using facial elongation software and replace his current body into a Daniel from a different timeline before anyone could notice. In turn, stopping all of the European drug cartel's means for hunting Daniel. This is because in this timeline Daniel had done nothing wrong in his life. He was a usual suburban dad. And if we know one thing about the European drug cartel, it is that they always oblige to technicalities. Mr. Hose unsurprisingly agreed to these terms and the aliens started the transformation process. When the aliens started their facial elongation process, they wanted to retain some essence of Daniel's face into what they would make his face turn into. When they completed the surgery, they gave Daniel the name of Salvator. Edward Anthony Volcano. You may recognize this man from the comedic television show Impractical Jokers, a show in which Daniel and a group of other people who have had their identities changed by these generous aliens would start 3 weeks after Daniel's surgery would commence. His co-stars' former identities are a few underground indie musicians who had interactions with these aliens mainly through drugs. But when the replacement Daniel came back down from the UFO, nobody had noticed, so life went on as normal for everyone. Even if you ask Daniel today about his past life, he will deny it. And that will be the truth, because in the present Daniel's life he had not experienced any of what I have talked about today in this video essay. This essay must remain extremely confidential and must never be shared with another other than the immediate family of Mr. Daniel Hose.